Hello, this is Andrew from Tenco Hydro, and this is one of our oil water separator designs. Wanted to share a quick video with you. Thought that it might help with a description of what we can do with our oil water separators. So this is one design that involves having the oil storage within the system. So briefly speaking, you have the point at the effluent right near the end where you have your separated oil, and that can be transported through the tank into an oil storage reservoir. So what you see here is the main tank, if you will, has this hopper bottom to it, and then you have a grit screw at the bottom, so any sediment or anything can be grit screwed out. And there's another picture of that, but this is where your oil water separation is happening through coalescing packs. And then once you get to the separation stage, which is typically near the effluent, the oil storage is on the sides of the hopper bottom, so to speak. Now, one concern that we've heard of is, do you have any issues with potential contamination of these lines getting into the coalescer and essentially recycling your oil through the separator? And no, we don't typically see that as an issue. There's not much turbidity. So if this is all watertight welded, which we of course would test for at the factory, you shouldn't have that concern. We do also offer instrumentation to prove that there is oil here and water here and there's no leakage. So if you want a little bit of an instrumentation package, we can do that with controls and all that kind of thing. Okay. So this is the separator in a nutshell from a different view. That was sort of the back-facing view, and this is the side-facing view. So you have your dirty influent comes in. This is untreated water in most cases, and it essentially gets worked through the coalescing packs, and that's what these are down here. Oftentimes we use polypropylene, but we've used a variety of different material for our coalescing packs. The dirty influent goes through the packs, and essentially magic happens in those packs, and then oil separates from the water, and oil rises. Oil is lighter than water, so oil's on the top, water's on the bottom, and then the oil spills into this chamber essentially. And then this is how it, this is one way of showing the path where the oil is gravity fed down to the storage unit, which is down here, and it's at a little bit of an incline. This is exaggerated for the presentation, but it's at a little bit of an incline so that the drain valves work nice and well. And then also, you have two chambers, so two drain valves, one for each chamber on each side. And then you also have that grit screw. That's what this thing is right here, and that one also has a drain valve as well. So dirty influent comes in, gets processed, oil goes this way, and then if it's not oil, then it's water, and the water comes down here, and here's your effluent pipe. Clean effluent, you're either discharging or you're going to another part of the process. Something else that people like to consider, especially if the oil water separator is dealing with a variety of waters, or if it's perhaps a primary element in your separation process, you can put a belt skimmer or a tube skimmer up here. We supply both. We prefer the belt skimmer. We find it, kind of gets the spot a little bit better. And a tube skimmer would involve having a tube kind of running around the surface here. Not bad, and we supply those as well, and they can work great. One concern we've had with tube skimmers is them, the tube getting all spaghetti strung up. But they certainly have their place, and for something like this, I could definitely see using either option. Last thing I'll say is we can customize for your needs. This is a gantry crane system for cleaning the coalescing packs. So this is a permanent install over the oil water separator, and when you need to clean these packs, which we have a different maintenance recommendation depending on the water that you have, but if you need to clean them, you pull it up using a motorized gantry crane, and you hose off the packs, and you clean them out, and then you put it back in. This is one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to use something like a davit crane, where you would kind of have an arm that swings over and essentially does the same thing and then picks it up, and then the arm swings back, or whatever gantry system you have, you could use for this if you have an existing gantry system. So something to keep in mind. We can make these standalone and have this be easy maintenance for you. Last thing that I will say about the oil water separator is we do offer field welding solutions. So we have some customers that need to fit a large tank through a small entryway, and essentially what field welding is we will be doing some amount of assembly and welding in the field. So your oil water separator would ship in maybe 2 pieces, let's say, and then maybe some components. There'd be 1 component or 2 components that would have to be added once it's in the room. The reason people do this is if you have to make a large tank fit through a small entry door, that additional hassle factor can be worth it because you're meeting your processing goals. So this is actually a picture of a different unit. This is not an oil water separator, but it's the same concept. You can either do a vertical or a horizontal field weld. And basically what we do is, in the case of, let's say, a horizontal, we put bolts around the entire cut, so to speak, and that's how it ships. So it ships as one unit in most cases, and we have those bolts all the way around. We can do lifting lugs on the top and bottom if we need. That we'll leave that up to customer specifications. But in this case, so this would be essentially extra strong and bolted. And what you would then do on site is you would take out all these bolts and you'd move the oil water separator or the tank in piece by piece. So that allows you to fit through tight spaces. We can essentially cut these tanks up however you need. We also do have the ability to perform, and this is needed, you need a watertight weld after install. So you're gonna take it apart in 2 pieces, move it into the room, put it back together, and then you'll need to do a watertight weld, which is inside of the tank, to make sure that there's no water leakage. And we have had, with our technicians, we've had no problems doing this in the field in terms of water leakage. We can do a dye penetrant test on site. I mean, we will do everything that is needed to make sure that this tank operates just as if it were all one piece to begin with. It will end up being all one piece. So, additional considerations for an oil water separator. Usually these are part of a water treatment system, and so we might recommend a DAF after the oil water separator. It depends on what your effluent goals are and what your city permit is and all those kinds of things, but that is something that we typically do and we can provide. In some cases, we've provided the oil water separator next to the DAF, and then we would also provide the platform in between. We would fabricate all of that in-house, so we would have very good testing for the entire system in that way. Aluminum platforms, a lot of these units end up being 10 feet tall or maybe even taller, so some type of platform to access the unit would probably be recommended. And then if you don't want to go for a DAF, which typically runs in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, we could also do something with a flocculation tube, and we could add additional polymers after the oil water separator, or we could essentially piece out portions of the DAF and perhaps meet the permit requirements without a DAF. So something else to consider. We would be, of course we're going to work with you with any budget and all the options that you want to look at, and we'll make sure we're doing the right thing for you. And the last thing that we want, we can test your water as well. We provide the flash, the flock. We can provide the polymer, test the water. We can be a complete turnkey solution. We can also do the install if you would prefer. So we can advise on those things as well. Thank you very much.